the Senate President and other lawmakers have criticized the implementation of the single payment system, saying it is an obstacle to Nigeria's economic development. The centralized payments policy, which requires over 700 ministries, departments, and agencies to process payments through a single office, according to them, has led to inefficiencies, delayed project completions, and diminished public trust, especially in constituencies expecting the execution of critical infrastructure projects. What's your take on this, Bri? You know, when former President Muhammadu Buhari came on board, he introduced the Treasury Single Account, the TSA, and so at that time, every agency of government had to pay to a single account. And then that also created some bottleneck in these agencies having access to the funds. But there was a reason why there was the single account. So now the lawmakers are complaining about the single payment system, saying that it has led to inefficiencies. How do we resolve this? Because something must have happened that results to this.
I want to even say that the single payment system idea was started from the previous administration that Mr. Buhari inherited. And I don't think it has bottlenecks. It's a system that will promote efficiency. It's a system that will bring some form of transparency in the dealings of the finances of the ministries, departments, and agencies, most especially the ones that are generating funds for the government. Now, when this initiative came to the fore and the investigation went in to start, a lot of dirt was unraveled. Why did I call them dirt? Some agencies have more than 8 accounts that monies are being made payment, most especially fund generating institutions. Some have more than 10. And this, they seem to lack a unified and structural way of financial operation. Sometimes some of the government functionaries could just sign some transfers, some financial dealings without the knowledge or complicit with some other government functionaries within the same institution. And those were the rods that were unraveled during that time. And immediately President Buhari came to the saddle, he rectified it, and it became in operation. Even though some ministries, departments, and agencies complained, members of the National Assembly also complained, but it operated for a while, and we saw that some form of foul play was exposed. Some foul play and some foul dealings was exposed that some government agencies and some government functionaries were engaged in, where monies are being transferred to personal accounts. We cannot forget the one that happened recently. There's been a ministry that was headed by one of the ladies. Now, so if the single payment system is going to rectify all that and has done a little bit to clean the stable, now we are complaining that it breeds in inefficiency and that the bottlenecks are too much. Let's not forget that bureaucracy is not completely bad. I first of all think that bureaucracy, first of all, within the annals of public administration, was set up in place to make sure it carries out check among the governing authorities, to make sure that if a document is going to be passed or signed, you must have at least 2 or 3 functionaries that will append their signature to that document in order to make room for transparency and for it to be in the glare of everyone that is concerned to see the dealings and the transactions that it will entail. Now, the reason why it is now called bottleneck, red tapeism, is because some human factors set in whereby some people may use that as an instrument against the other organization or the other institution by refusing to append the signature and intentionally delaying the move or the fluidity of the passage of those documents. So bureaucracy was put in place to carry out checks. If the minister is going to sign, the accountant will be aware. Of course, he himself is going to append the signature. The Bureau of Public Procurement they are going to be aware. They will append their signature. So it's not a backhand dealing. Because all this bureaucracy or all these roadblocks are set in place for transparency, for openness, is now being abused. That is why people now, twisted it like bottlenecks, bureaucratic.
Okay, so
bottlenecks.
when there is abuse in a system,
yes. So
I'm taking this question now to Doc. When there is abuse in a system that was set up to curtail abuse in the first instance, how do we remedy that?
Well, I don't think it's principally abuse that's the issue. Like Priya has mentioned, we just have to understand why was bureaucracy necessary. Two factors necessitated the establishment of bureaucracy. The first is indiscipline, where you find that people you give assignment to, they can compromise and use public resource for personal gain. And to that extent, there was a need to put system and structures in place to ensure the road belonged to everybody and no one person appropriates it. Then there was also the issue of incompetence, where you have to give an assignment to somebody and then you align this person to process this assignment, but you don't have competence to do that job. And what that means is that if there's no second eye to oversee what this person has done, then of course an error is committed and the state becomes liable because such individual is acting on behalf of the state. And it is these two factors that really necessitated Max Weber in conceptualizing what today we call bureaucracy, so that you put some check in place so that people. Now the question we have to ask ourselves, especially against the backdrop of the complaint of the Senate President, is that have we been able to deal with the issue of inefficiency or incompetence? And I think the answer is still obviously no. Now, are we having more disciplined public officers? The answer cannot be yes in the affirmative. And to that extent, the need to put some controls, measure in place is quite very important. Let's even look at, for example, processing things and doing them as fastly as possible. Now, auditors won't get this report until maybe after 3 or 4 years. And so once this thing are treated so quickly and they pass, what you're going to get is that you will have multiple of these things happening before they are discovered. And that's not just
and
quite
sometimes
right.
it's quick for those who are culpable to get out of the system.
And get out of the system. So putting those checks in place, yes, no matter how slow it looks like for MDA to process. And I think is also the fact that we also need the MDAs themselves to be as realistic as possible on placing demands on this payment system. Don't forget that the system has to also check whether these guys are complying with the extant rules and regulations that govern such a payment. And so it's not just that this is actually processed via the internet, of course, which of course is faster as of today. Now you may talk about that we have weak infrastructure in terms of internet, but that is a different conversation. But the fact that somebody needs to see that these things are done well, that we don't just leave it at the discretion of public officer. And I think to that extent, we should just manage what we have at the moment while we improve the process. So we don't need, because that some people are complaining, because saying, oh, our constituency want this thing done like yesterday. If plans and strategy are put in place, some of all these bottlenecks can be dealt with. Look at what we see in public service, which is really very worrisome. Now, when you go to ministries and department and agency, everybody is very, very comfortable now. There's nothing happening. Nothing's happening. Now, things start to happen from September, October, November. And we have a 12-month calendar year where things are supposed to happen in January, some things are supposed to happen in February, some things are supposed to happen in across the month. But now, all the activity, you shift it toward the end of the year, knowing fully well that at the end of the year, at the 1st of December, you are supposed to refund every money that you have not spent. Now you are putting pressure on the payment mechanism. And now you are complaining that it's slow. So I think it is that balance that National Assembly need to look at. That why are we pushing all our spending toward the end of the year? Why are they not evenly distributed? So that activities kick off as the budget year kick off. So because the people who are pushing this thing toward the end of the year sure have some intentions. Because when you are rushing and pushing and you create a kind of confused environment, so many things can pass unnoticed. And I think this is what they should be more worried about rather than the system and the structure itself. Because if it's given 12 months to process all this payment, we won't have some of these delays that I talked about.
But don't you think that the delay in the passage of the budgets, which also delays allocation getting to the MDs and then the processing the payment through a single system, is part of the problem here?
It is not, because the law has accounted for that. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says no matter how much you delay the budget, you can spend up to 60-70% of your previous year's budget. Because you are the agency generating the money, and your money is passed through what they call it, the treasury single account, and through remitter, and it is in your account. It's not as if it's a warehouse. So when you need that money, you write to the Office of the Accountant General that, yes, I want to execute this project, I need this money out for me. So it's not as if that you put it in a common purse and therefore government will not be distributing. No, it is your own personal account, but domiciled in the CBN. So what that means is that all the money that comes to you, all the allocation that is come to you is in there. So you can spend up to a certain percentage of the previous year budget. So it actually has made provision, and that's why you also say that even, for example, this budget 2024 is extended to terminate up to July. So what this means is that the law envisages some of all these bottlenecks, but I can tell you for certain that it is deliberate to some extent, or some MDAs who will push their activities. Because at the end of the day, and go and check it, most of these things that are happening toward the close of the year, they don't even have the intention of doing things where the law wants it.
Blessing.
And so we put pressure unnecessarily on a system that should be naturally seamless.
Okay. I agree with I subscribe to what Doc said, and I think Pri also alluded to that there is a need for that bureaucracy. It is to check the excesses of some public servants. Yes, it is good. But what the Senate President is calling for is an overhaul of the system for better efficiency. So I think where certain things perhaps need to be digitized, they should be. Where we can improve the process, it should be, so that while bureaucracy is in place, it is not acting as a stumbling block.
Yes, one of the disadvantages of bureaucracy, Doc referred to something quite significant and important, where it is the requirement of the ministries, departments, and agencies, or any government institution to make a refund back to the state, the central account, for monies that they've not spent when the budgeting year, has elapsed. There was a time in Delta State, and it was a national issue, where one of the past governors were fingered for corruption and for looting the monies that was made for the state development for personal use and was transferred to another account. So through the instrument of the Economics and Financial Crimes Commission in conjunction with the Interpol, these monies were recovered. So it resulted to a court case. The Attorney General from Delta State, the Attorney General from the federal government, including other law enforcement agencies, started dragging the money. So they were making arguments that according to the law, the budgeting year has already elapsed. So this money should not be in the coffers of Delta State, or should not be used by Delta State again. It should be returned back to the central government's purse, which is what the law stated. And that's bureaucracy to check. No, just a moment, Doc, please. Let me just land. So there was an argument, and the Attorney General of Delta State and the Delta State government came out and said, look, this money That's the new government, not the previous government that looted the money. The new government now say, look, according to the law, that is what it stated. However, this money was given in custody of the chief executive to spend for the betterment of the state, but it was misappropriated. Now this money is now back. So if it were within it, if it were used for the specific reason that the state disbursed it, we would have used it for developmental purpose. So give us back the money because we have projects on ground to use it. But the argument from the central government now said, no, according to the law, this is that the budgeting year has expired. And they're like, so we should return the money. So there was this argument, and it resulted, in fact, it got scholars from the law profession started writing. Okay. So now that's bureaucracy at work, because I think bureaucracy would have exercised an understanding that, look, if this money was really in the coffers of the government for the intention, it would have been used for the intention of the same purpose for which it was allocated. But because it was misappropriated by the previous administration, and through the arms of the law, we have brought it back. So why don't we use it? Why must we now obey the law that says we should refund it because the budgeting year has elapsed? So do you get the logic behind it?
I'm going to add to that question. Douglas, so that you answer the question.
What I was just trying to, I don't think that argument is hinged on budget. Yeah, bureaucracy is involved, and of course, somebody is helping you to recover your money that was stolen away, and that is what the argument is all about. The money was debtors, and federal government cannot lay claim to the money that belongs to debtor. Whether it was budgeted, it is say we receive it and we should house it. And those strengthening of our federation still needs to be worked out. It's not that, oh, the money has means what budget is. So it's the fact that debtor owes that money, is stolen somewhere by somebody who is an agent of the state. And of course, because you need the support of the government to recover, federal government to recover that money, also means that there's a process through which that money should come back to debtor state. So, because it's like when you are doing accounts, so you see income expenditure. So people always talk about the balancing of the account, because if it doesn't follow a given process, it will look as if an infraction has happened. That of course you will now have an empty space and say, okay, this money coming here, how did it go out? So that's the conversation on the that issue. Yes. So government is not, federal government don't say, oh, the money is ours. It's actually debtor's own, but the process through which it gets to Delta has to follow accounting procedures. So that's but you see, what the Senate President talking about overhaul of the entire payment system is what I'm saying. So what are we supposed to overhaul? What is in this is simple. Take, for example, all payments through remitter. Every agency has their account. That's not a payment. Sending money to the account is not a payment. So where the issue is money leaving the account. It's a process. So we cannot bridge the process. And bridging the process, overhauling the process so that I can have multiple people spend money at will not be for the interest of transparency and governance that everybody seems emphasizing in Nigeria. And I think the need for transparency, the need for accountability is much needed today than ever, so that government can itself regain its trust. So I feel that the public officers also need to do their own homework, such that when requests are made, the system is not overloaded. You know, because there's this 11th-hour syndrome that is associated with us. And that leads to what they call the fire brigade approach to almost all the issues. That if you tell people today and say, come and fill a form, people naturally want to delay till the last minute.
You know,
when
I wanted to ask a question.
Then there's a rush, and that rush put pressure on the system. So
No.
if you are given a time space to make a process a payment, and I think we should be able to schedule in such a way that it goes through that time space, and then there are no pressure on the system at a particular point.
Okay. To piggyback on what the question Pri asked, I wanted to ask a second question to clear this. You know, according to the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, which provides that when agencies receive allocation, they have the right to use it, and then any remaining return back to the coffers of the federal government. Now, why do we have a case when agencies would wait till close to the end of the year before wanting to use those funds? Is it because they do not want to return the money? Now, how much of cases are we seeing where agencies return monies not used back to government? Why is there a rush to quickly expend the money if there had been no need for the money from the beginning of the year?
You see, and this is what a lot of people are arguing. I remember last year in March when the Public Account Committee was being inaugurated, and I had occasion to speak spoken on that event. What I said to the PAC chairman was simple. We cannot be talking about audit process that we're saying that is performance-based when the budgetary process itself is not performance-based. The envelope system in Nigeria is what is giving room for all these shady arrangements. See, what is the envelope? The money comes into the Federation account, and then, of course, the Office of the Accountant General of Federation give envelope to all ministry agencies and departments.
Whether or not they have performed the previous year?
No, not even whether or not they have performed. So, say for example, we just talked about the statutory transfer. Okay, money is going to NDDC. So every month, as government receives its revenue, they share it and give it in envelope. Now we give some to UBEC, we give some to NDDC, we give some to Federal Ministry of Education, we give some to this agency. But these monies are not tied to projects.
That's why I asked.
So
it's not dependent on what they performed the previous year.
So these monies are not tied to project. It's not that, okay, this month I'm releasing 500 billion
for XYZ projects.
The computers you say you want to buy. No. So this money is given to this agency to say, this year, this month, you got 500 billion. Now, it's at the discretion of the ministry, department, or agency to determine what that 500 should be used for. So that envelope system is the real problem. So what they receive is that they can use it, okay, we can spend this on training, while this other one is pending. We have entertainment, or we have something, we can spend this on this money. So the agency determine. But you know, where there is monopoly and without discretion, no accountability, what you find is always C. That's why they say M minus D minus A is equal to corruption. So you find that we
Could you explain this formula to the audience? M minus what again?
Minus D.
So M stands for what?
Monopoly.
Okay, monopoly minus
yes, plus discretion.
Plus discretion equals
minus accountability.
Minus accountability
Gives
equals
corruption.
Monopoly.
That's a good formula.
So if I have
so you can't have monopoly and discretion without accountability. Good.
So if I give you opportunity to determine what you want to use, and then of course you have the discretion to use it, but there's no platform for accountability, then what you see is corruption. And that's why you see FRC is always complaining. Why are you not returning to us? The law says that same 2007 Act that established the Fiscal Responsibility Commission says that every ministry, agency, and department must return statement of account of expenditure for the month, each month, to that. But how many MDA complies with this? And these are the issues. And I do hope that by the time we get to policy discourse, when we have opportunity to speak with Bakare, we will find out why there are no consequences for these infractions that do happen within the MDA.
Yes, we will address it at that level, but I think that if we want to achieve progress, or if we intend for bureaucracies to achieve, produce efficiency, then certain loopholes in the law that gives ministries, agencies, the chance to exploit those loopholes and frustrate the aim of that set-up bureaucracy should be checked. I think it's time for us to look again at the Fiscal Responsibility Act and see areas where amendments are necessary, because I think too much of discretion at the end of the day would just lead to a lot of indiscipline. I don't think agencies should be given so much discretionary powers. I think that can actually be checked. But there will be a discussion during policy discourse when we revisit some of this issue in depth so that we can nip it in the bud.